Julie here with Eris and this is Mars hour, and we have Moon 15 degrees Libra. Mars is 19 degrees Capricorn. Sun is conjoining Venus to the 20th degree. Vulcan, men, women, and hermaphrodites. You know, this has been since 12 degrees. Venus, Sol, Mars. We're at 20 degrees. We're not over yet. There are so many things, okay? There are just so many things. Mars is now opposing Jupiter, and I want to try to conceive the transition from trauma-based society to true cohesion. And one of the questions after I was asking myself after my previous video with Eris going through my own Mercury, um, two of my most familiar charts this 2 years moons, and um, and the question that came about is what is happening when Eris is in hard aspect or conjoining Venus or the ruler of the seventh. I have it with the ruler of the seventh and fourth in transit. I have it with Moon square Aries, but Aries trine in my midheaven, um, which means she's also sextiling my IC in Juno. Okay. Um, and the sextiling, yes, the last decan of Aquarius. So, trine in last degrees of Aries, which is also now in transit now. With my natal, yeah. Aries is the one that was disincluded. Now, not as many people think, because she can be in the elite. In fact, she denotes the elite. And she's in the part of the elite that's supposed to communicate with the commoners. In fact, Aries was considered the one disincluded from the table that threw a chaos. And this archetype with ruler of seventh, Jupiter, Venus, can bring a situation where the partner of, if it's a man, the partner of a man or the values of a man can have to do with throwing chaos, particularly chaos between women. Okay? Chaos between women to supposedly benefit from the chaos. But this can create situation where people feel disincluded. Okay, they want to throw this chaos because they feel disincluded. And it's not an easy transit. It's definitely not easy in general. But this is changing society through chaos. For a man that has this, he's exceptionally liable not just to Me Too affairs, but to be outed as extortion cult leader. It means that the women around him would be disincluded in a way that they almost necessary to throw chaos, because not because they were seeking chaos, but because what they were facing was necessitating their reaction, which innately, particularly in Aries, the I am provokes the chaos in society. Okay, for example, when I was in academia, then I had to stand my ground, my I am, in the face of something very weird. Okay, let's say. And it was so much so that I had to state in the beginning, I was avoiding stating, for example, that I'm not or never been a sex worker. The reason is because, let's say, around the Me Too, there was the question of um, delegalization of being a client of basically sex trafficking. Um, but the trafficked women were trying to do activism. And one of them was in academia. And I confronted her for not standing up for me, in my case, where they tried to traffic me. Um, and then the more I learned about embodied sexuality and so on and so forth, the question that the naive self had to ladies that were defining themselves as sex workers became more and more. There was one lady that suddenly said to me, I feel my relations in society as such that they are raping me and expecting me to have orgasm. And she was not just talking about, and she said that in her sex work, she said that's what she doesn't agree to give to them. She doesn't agree to orgasm. And she was hiring a bodyguard to basically be, and she was a very tall, beautiful woman. She kept getting harassed, actually because of her very beautiful looks. She was this very, very tall woman who was looking like Aphrodite. And if she tried to do any job, normal job, she would get so harassed and people would look at her so, and they were admiring the goddess, but they didn't know how to honor a woman. So even a job, she would feel like those things happened to her. Now, and she talked to me, she thought that I was also a sex worker. So the reason I did not say I'm not was such that I said every person needs to treat person with respect, regardless of whether they are this, I don't know, sex worker, not sex worker. Then I discovered that all of the sex work is trafficking. And with this person in academia, they used spiritual warfare to rape me, to torture me, to try to fragment my personality. To interfere with my ability to have income, my ability to finish my degree, to my ability to have housing, within my ability to have social circles. So you see how this Venus Eris plays. And I was so disincluded, and then not only he raped, but he would say that the people he raped were sex workers. That forced me to say, hey, there's a person that was rapey and said such and such, but I never was and never agreed. It forced me to confess I was never a sex worker. Now, I never said that I was. It's not like I was misleading people. Now, this shows us how the crisis around Aries Venus, okay, it's more than Pluto, it's more than Neptune. It is a crisis of society where someone would literally, their I am is a chaos. They say I am. What did I say in the past 2 years? Drop the Peter ring, I am. Drop the Peter ring, I am. Because the I am, who I am, drops the Peter rings. and with Eris, the I am changes society. And it cannot be silenced because the I am is a declaration. Declaration of independence. I also talked about astrological considerations for declarations of independence. And we see more and more that we need the necessity to have alternative countries, even within our own countries, that do honor women. We are gaslighted to think that there are safe places to practice sex work when it's all trafficking. And people are dissociated that they have been ritually abused in childhood, so much so as to alter their sexuality. And then people talk about, use the indigenous card to try to justify ritual abuse and child trafficking. We have a Sedna story showing us what happens when we don't accommodate for a woman's housing, food, in a society, and we traffic her to supposedly get power over nature. Her death is taking the marine life with it. And it's true, because what do the people that traffic, what policies do? They do policies that pollute. Even if it, whichever type of energy, oil, gas, even solar energy, requires mining minerals. If we mine the bottom of the ocean, there are many ecosystems that we haven't even learned to get to know. Thanks, Deutsche Welle, Deutsche World, for the amazing broadcasts about the origins of energies and even rejuvenating energies. And also the myth busting about Germany having so-called rejuvenating energies. Even solar panel requires minerals. The phones that I'm broadcasting from requires minerals. Now we also have to pay attention what are the byproducts of industrialized society, because they go into our teeth, into our food, into our soil. I'm not saying that cannot be technology is good for humanity in ways that are ethical, but we definitely need to look into that and to raise more awareness. Mercury is about to ingress to Gemini, which is technology. And Sedna has to do with the minerals just in the bottom of the ocean where they're digging out. So those people that make policies based on not true cohesion because they don't have intelligence when they train the intelligence workers to by rape. So they don't have science, they don't have truth. There was the story about Stalin, that he did not have a doctor. Was a woman safe and free next to Stalin? And he's the leader of a nation. If next to a leader of a nation a woman cannot be safe and free, then some say maybe he was a woman, I don't know. But if a woman leading a nation and people cannot be safe and free in that nation, now of course it was because this woman was grown up in extortion cult society. This is why the Eris story is complicated, convoluted, and it creates a series of chaos where once I am is a chaos around everyone. And to be that I am, there is a chaos that is thrown, so much so pushed to the corner where one have to throw that chaos to even state an I am. If people believe that there is such thing, forget about the word whore. even if they have the best view about sex workers. No stigma, no nothing. If people so much as believe that there is such thing as sex worker in a world where there's still trafficking, it creates that even if they say they think somewhat in the past, I was never say somebody may think I'm a sex worker. I said, I'm not. Okay, that happens. It's like somebody thinks, I don't know, I'm from Argentina. I'm not from Argentina. Like, it's the same charge I had to these words. Until I learned what the things that Annika Lucas is talking about. And I listened to sex workers because I cared. And in each and every narrative, I saw trauma. And even the narratives that almost managed to convince me that we simply have different sexualities. Then suddenly, this lady saying she has relationship with society, that she feel like she's been raped, and they ask her to fake an orgasm. And she was beautiful like Aphrodite. Tall woman. So if people so much as believe that there is a concept, that this concept is not really existing. And that, with Eris, creates a situation where the I am completely breaks the foundation of society. But the fact it can also be with the co-presence of Neptune and Eris, what is missing? The missing concept of a woman. Not as Annika Lucas described it, that she was supposed to be sex slave for the elite, and she was, by the way, in some of my psychic attacks, I was treated in similar fashion, which is they teach of a woman how to be worshipped like a goddess. Yes, I never talked about this, I know. They do second frontier. They do physical rituals and they do psychic rituals, particularly in the era of Neptune Pisces. People have ascendant sun and moon in Neptune, that Neptune was transiting, could have been subjected to that because the whole world was learning how to channel, and they used these to try to psychically attack and try to do such rituals and rites to use that realm. Okay? This is why I looked at the body mind questions in academia and so on and so forth. It was so challenging to the system. So they try to do rituals of when the body is worshipped but like a goddess, and in their perspective is not a private authority on the body, but public one. This actually doesn't come from centralized, but actually decentralized, and even egalitarian societies that were seen both women as property, that they have to have supposedly access to women, and so on and so forth. Now, of course, to be loved, to be touched, to experience eroticism, of course, it's a human need. But this is the square between, yes, this is the square between Aries, Aquarius, and Taurus, because the erotic intelligence is not the same as the wealth redistribution of Aquarius. Okay, but to try to do wealth redistribution with eroticism would simply mean to rape people, and that would bring extinction. Is that what brought the masses and masses of graves also in Soviet Union? Just like, in the army, but in Israel they tried to do water discipline, and many soldiers died because They needed to drink water. Today, water discipline is everybody take out their, take out the water and everybody drinks water. But the opposite is also not true. But this notion of water discipline, with people who are not drinking water, by the way, also to drink too much water can also kill. But that basically they thought they could exist without water, and did water discipline as a part of the army training. Soldiers died. Same as to try to rape women and call it wealth redistribution in terms of eroticism and access to sexuality. Netherlands had policy where people would get funding to go to sex workers, but those were actually trafficked people. And so what? If person has disability, if person has this, well, there is technology. Yes, there are many women that do not have with intimate relations or a man beside that they can relax into. But if we as women will say, oh, every woman has a right to access a man she can relax into, first of all, it's not feasible. This is why all these men that go to these places, they're targeted to assassination and extortion. It's not that their need is not correct. Okay, the need to be loved, the need to be touched, the need to be desired, the need to have eroticism. Of course, it's a valid need. But even valid needs need to be met adaptively. They don't want the women that would sit eye to eye to them, because these women would also need them to commit on demand. Normally they call them borderline. You rather have a woman saying, okay, I still have this pattern. Let's see what relational trauma I have. Oh, let's learn radical acceptance. Then woman saying, you need to commit to me. Because if I need to have sex with you, you need to commit to me. You need to provide for me. Where's my money? Where's my houses? Where's my vacation? And it's demand. Why? Because if men demand sex, women demand everything. You take her everything, she wants your everything. Now, it sounds very, you take her everything, she wants your everything could sound eroticized, but not when it's like I said it. Now, the Eris, Venus, can be those places where, in some sort of a value, the man or the woman or whoever carries this chart or whoever brings that to another person's chart. For example, I have Eris going to a ruler of my 7th and 4th. Me and or my partner or people that try to juxtapose to me in such way could be feeling so isolated that they have to come out as the I am. Yes, but also vice versa. I had to say that I'm not sex worker, and there's no such thing as sex worker, because it's all the ritualized children that were raped and tortured, were smuggled out of the cult, or they got too old to be elite sex slave because it's only for children. then they try to traffic them, or they try to inaugurate them, and that would also entail such, yes, rituals, and those things are used in political assassination, for example. Eris in Eris means that identity here can create chaos and Some people feel disincluded so much that they have to talk chaos. Eris is known to change society. Now, there are societies which Dr. Chi Yang talked about, the trauma bond based societies, where people only sustain by throwing that chaos. But that doesn't bring, it's one of the things that most challenge Venus that needs to relax into. Aries transits and onsets are quite prolonged period, and it means that when a time for the native, if it's in the chart or the transit, is that there are going to be pivotal relationships that are a part of the chaos of the changing society. For example, if I have the planet ruling the elite next to the ruler of my prospective husband, okay, then then I have to make changes societally in the elite to sustain my I am. Now, we live in at the time, it happens at a time where the world is changing so much so that in such times, sometimes the entire aristocracy died and we had the new nobility. So we're going to have a lot of people that have Eris with Venus, Eris with ruler of seventh, Eris moon can even be, because that's relation. It's also housing. I have ruler of fourth and seventh. So I remember when I gave reading for Netherlands, and there are two moons there, they're right on that Eris. And I said, oh my God, something happened. So, and I said, well, because I was thinking so much about them that I forgot me. And I said, oh, it's also ruler of my fourth house. And indeed, also in my house, they almost burned our building. That is. um, so, and with Eris, there can be an interchanging sense of being isolated or disincluded. Because it is about society changing. For example, you can imagine, and I think I told that story when my father dated my mother, and both of them are beautiful, like, wow, you know. And when he dated my mother, and he didn't know how to, so he took her to see what to see in Amsterdam. It was a red light district. Okay, it wasn't as about to anything. They later they were married for 14 years. He was taking good care of her, and so on and so forth. That was his, like, in COVID, when I was in COVID in Netherlands. In the news, they said, well, there's less red light it's so embedded into society that even in Israel during the Me Too times, I was taken into account. Wait a second, there's Netherlands. There is part of the culture. Then, when I heard Anneke Lucas talking, the Trudeau seers, Saint Michel, And when I saw what is the inauguration for leaders, I said one thing and one thing. And I was very, when Anneke Lucas said for what was happened to her and so on and so forth, I said this can only work if the politician was also tortured. Okay? And basically it kind of began to expose that the entire society there is growing in those type of conditions. And that's governing the policies, because I saw when I attend to political assassination prevention, I saw they extorted them to make policies. Now some of them, they have Mars-Jupiter opposition, or Mars, I think Mars opposing the Moon, so they act against their emotional safety. It doesn't mean it's not a right action, it just means that the right action sometimes endangers them. But also in those societies, they try to extort the people to undermine themselves and thereby get them assassinated. Or if somebody stands for something as actually, if somebody says outright, well, they don't say it in so many words, but they know even the biggest empire was basically a drug dealing empire. So what do we want to fight against? Drugs is public health issue. What we want is justice. But then what about the Me Too? Yes. And so they would get a drug dealer to assassinate them. And if they stand in rights of minorities of origin, they would get it of that origin. Or they would get a Dutch person vote the same village. And I've assisted in preventing one surefire attempt. Not going to elaborate on this. Was both from the same village. And yeah. Now, for example, the case of, and that's known case, Pim Fortuyn, he was talking against the immigration, but they took on purpose a 33 years old, 33 number of 33-degree Mason. Also Jesus, they said, died at 33. And they took 33 years old man, Dutch, to assassinate him. It was animal rights activist or something like that. And yes, that's how they orchestrate these things. The oaths of silence or decapitation. You see, if the people have scars, they have. And those things running, something supposed to be representative, transparent. Now, 22 Laws of Fortune. As I began this episode, and Midheaven was with Antares, is definitely needed. Turning to soul our leaders. We saw Chiron wound of assassination. Still being addressed. So when we talk about relations with Eris, if the Pluto one could talk about power dynamics, the Neptune, I don't know, facing our addictions or addictive patterns or ideation patterns, Eris is downright changes in society. This relationship was meant, and now a lot of people talk about LGBTQ. Now we see with Chiron and Eris and Andromeda constellation, which is reconciliation, inclusion, but also dealing with kidnapping and torture in societies that basically is a part of what needs to change in society. Extortion cults. So those people that are so-called lucky enough to have placements with Eris or Eris transit in significant placements has to do with relations. Those are relations that happen at times where society is changing, and they are meant to change society. Think Adolf Hitler, Eva Braun. Okay, he did all of these policies against women. Eventually, and I think the day they were married, they committed suicide. Okay, this is. Um, and while those are very likely to be exciting relations, I can tell you, as there were many attempts to juxtapose, and in that case, there are two people going through a lot. Okay, there are two people going through a lot because both of the concepts of the I am are basically not existing yet. They maybe exist as a word, but they don't exist yet. For example, in those society, there is no concept for woman. Not as a concept that allows for love that's actually loving. Okay? And women, they're suffering from that. Because outside, to outside society, there can be an image of family man and so on and so forth. But inside society, there isn't that concept. If there is society that allows to harm women, then there's no concept of woman. Okay? A lot of people, for example, Melania Trump had a lot of difficulty because it is shown on her face how afraid she is when she stands supposedly by her husband when he was with, I don't know if it was Stormy Daniels or I don't know. It's not that she doesn't understand what is going on. And it's definitely not that she supports what he did. And as she's supposed to explain that, her face looks terrified. And it's not that she is, people like to paint it out as a skinny white woman, okay? It's way more complicated than that. Uranus going to Venus, through the Venus. I need to see the movie because I know there's a movie about Melania Trump. Now, I saw Trump is a Leo ascendant several years ago. I saw that Pluto ingress to his seventh house. I said it's going to be power relations because his divorce before Melania, it was when both him and his ex-wife ran a business together. And then they both saw what the challenges that were. So he wanted actually a woman that will have her own life and independence, but will still be housewife, because because for him he tried to have the equal version. Okay. And then I saw that even though Pluto going into his seventh will require him to have completely equal partner. And there was even the question of divorce there. Okay? Trust me, I'm astrologer. They turn to us, they don't say it, but they turn to us to look at these things. And I said, yes, if Trump divorced Melania, maybe Melania would want, I don't know, but I don't know from whom it comes. But if Trump looks for another woman, she will be even more powerful, even more standing to her standards. And they have to look at moon compatibility. Okay, ideas and housing. This is Nakshatra's teaching of Ladadun Sheva. I'm not going to elaborate on that. But for there to be moon compatibility, they cannot be cloning projects, and they cannot be forcing women to have babies or forcing them to keep babies. Such is the woman, if Trump today divorces Melania or vice versa, such is the woman that he will be, even by force, juxtaposed to. Okay? And she could be his age. She could be age where she no longer has children of her own, or it doesn't matter. That is the meaning of Pluto going to the 7th house. Cancer ascendant. Have colleague Cancer ascendant. His wife developed a global business to do with astrological talismans during the time for when Pluto ingressed. For Pluto was towards the finishing of his 7th house. And yes, there was conversations about, and I said, other women 7 times more. She will be 7 times more feminist. Said, no Mormon talks next to me. I said what I said. Okay, Pluto going through 7th house is also Pluto opposing ascendant. My 7th house is Virgo, extent. And by the way, naturally, people of generation that was Pluto Virgo, we have Pluto Saturn square. Almost all of us, the late is escaping from the square. Escaping from prison, that's what he said or she said, I don't assume the gender. But this is Pluto in the 7th house. When I was in academia, I ran into people of the generation with Pluto in my 7th house. And they had to stand into the fact that they cannot put me in any of the boxes that they have in their secret society. And I had to face the fact that my prospective partner is probably of a certain power position. And the world politics and economy and technology, the power of technology, is to accommodate for what they call power couple. In a society where they try to do the opposite. Now, Eris is those societal changes. If Pluto is, I don't know, politics should accommodate for women having their own stand in society, okay? In Hebrew we say parve, is not here, not there. There's no such concept as a whore or a sex worker or a sex-positive sex worker. In any society where they can be whore, it means that there's no concept of woman that allows for a good sex, intimacy, love, conception, upbringing, relationship to stand the test of time. Now we're in Eris domain. Oh, yes, remember that place where your father took your mother to insinuate that he's also sexually attractive to her? Just to see, because it was so ingrained in the culture here, based on a foundation of this place, based on entire lie. An entire lie, I said many things based on, no, this is not entire lie. This is lie that needs to be told the truth so that there can exist life in that country. Can I avoid that? No. Can I just stay single? To stay single, even you need to tend to that. Now we're in Aries domain. Okay, it's something that shakes the foundation of society. Something that is so well ingrained in society that's accepted by everyone, and Aries is like, no, that's a lie. And this lie causes all relationships to be either a lie or at least partially unsuccessful. And not only that, it's usually happening during time of changing worlds. When it's the onset of Aries, we see the world is changing. Oh, men are afraid of women to keep to not want children, so they will not have their bloodline legacy. There are going to be masses of anonymous graves in such extent that humanity never knew over the topic of sexual sovereignty. Many orphans. Who do you expect to care for these orphans? Your entire bloodline could erase. You can bring 17 children, and your entire bloodline could erase from the face of the earth in one bomb. These are Aries times. A lot of people are like, oh, we need to work to save money, to save this, to save that. The even ladies said, young women said, oh, I rent even though I can afford to buy a house. Why do you think you can afford to buy a house? When there is emergency case, all of your savings are confiscated, including a house. If you survive the war and manage to get a shilumim and retain the real estate of then and so on and so forth, usually only the rich bankers were able to. Okay, when my grandfather escaped, how do I know my grandfather's family was not molesting children, at least not to that extent? Is because when my grandfather and his daughter and his brother, my grandfather never got shilumim. They never retained like the property in Sarney or if they were rich bankers, not the Swiss bank that was what money to everyone. Think about it. There were Jewish bankers and then there was Swiss bank. Swiss banks are the folks that told the Rothschilds and Rockefellers what money at the end of the Second World War, as well as to the Nazis. Like I said, we need to pay attention because Greenpeace can challenge Standard Oil, but not the chemtrails. Scientifically. Well, we haven't found evidence. What do you think? It's like the tobacco story. Where are the evidence buried? Um, in mass graves? Think what technologies they were developing during Hitler's time that they buried the evidence against it in mass graves. It is a part of which my ancestors are buried in. Holocaust jokes. Um, by the way, 7th of October, before the Israeli response, the social media went about Israel is joking, oh shit, we fell in a generation of a Holocaust. Because 7th of October, they were convinced we're going to have a Holocaust. It kind of was, but then the response made the Holocaust small. um, and what happens after that? You see, Mama Taliban are back in Gaza. That's preparing, even if they wipe Israel. When I would make a thought experiment, I love to talk with people and so on, and they would tell me about Israel, and I say, okay, let's make thought experiment. Let's say Israel is wiped out of the planet. How's the Middle East? Um, and I'm not particularly patriotic person. I'm much in favor of human rights, and I think no country or any entity can sustain without individual human rights. Um, in fact, the more they try to, the more they build to extinction. But as Dr. Chiang said, this perpetual war state preserved their trauma bond-based cohesion. Volkan, stop joking about Israel. Don't think that you are different. In fact, it is taken, he says, from military units in China, historically. If you think that your society is different, ask yourself, what happened to the White March? What made it wither? And please don't bug permaculture primrose about how violent their resistance against ICE should be before we address the point about the White March. Oh, it was a big demonstration. Why did it wither? It's not like was the technology used on the citizens? Was now, if so, why do we bug the Americans about not being resistant enough? They also bug the Jews that were dying in the concentration camps for being the lean Jew. My grandfather, the lean Jew, and he was indeed lean Jew, he had typhus, managed to go from the death camp in Poland to Israel through the Italian forests. I don't think the muscle Jew could sustain that. For a blink of a second to stop blaming Palestinians in not resisting enough. And then Mama Taliban came back to Gaza. Where are the men? Now, if it was not in their culture, I would say happened to them what happened to the Europeans after the White March and to the Americans during ICE. But when it is in the culture, yes. So Eris is those changing cultures. Just like in Netherlands, we have people talking about this topic of culture. I just have it, ook in Netherlands, ook Netherlands culture. But the elite culture, the aristocracy culture. Okay? But they can't say it. But why can't they say it? Because there is the oath of decapitation that they never chose to take. Is men upon men dealing with being Medusas, even though they are the men. Medusa spoke up, but they can't speak because the fear that they would be decapitated. So Eris is this this time where there is the chaos of a change in society. And is it easy to be in an Eris type of relation? No. Is knowing astrology important? Yes. Yes, because that can, if we know that Eris is not just LGBTQ, but something way more fundamentally challenging than that, then we understand, first of all, then we understand where are we, where's either a partner or the person that was juxtaposed to us. And when we understand that, we can treat that as an Eris issue rather than as a personal issue. And the Eris might even push people to treat it as a personal issue. Okay, something that has accompanied me all my life. Gav Moon, square Eris. There might be a push, but the important thing is to understand the change in structures in society. This is the type of thing that can bring situation of smear campaign and all those things. But the truth eventually comes out. And we have to understand that this is because the society is changing. And what it changes is the foundation. Okay, for example, Einstein had moon. Remember when my father contacted me, he gave me a quote of Einstein. Einstein had moon squaring Eris. Yes, for me it does not express in mathematics, at least not at this point, so much as for him. But the societal changes. And let's say the equivalent of societal changes that I am a part of are the equivalent of quantum mechanics. That the war is on sexual sovereignty, the training, and so on and so forth, that violates sexual sovereignty, violates the true cohesion, that the wars are changing towards. I was the one who identified, by the way, on the basis of teachings of person that taught us about the wars and so on and so forth, taught us about the fact that women had the right to vote after the war, 2 generations of men. Maybe he plagiarized it from feminists, maybe he didn't. But then he was a part of trafficking ring. And then I said, is your teachings, and they are true, that can't you see this war is about the sexual sovereignty? That if this is the training of all of the people, it's your teachings that the next war is going to be on sexual sovereignty. Like, think about if for women to have right to vote and bank account, 2 generations of men and women died, then imagine how much for sexual sovereignty. Now, the sexual sovereignty is also within the men. He couldn't tell me that. He said, oh, the men become bonded on the basis of being violent to women.